Hey everyone, Hail the Sun just dropped a new album on Friday. I've loved this band for a long time, and I thought I would share my thoughts on the new album with you. I don't have a lot of album reviews up on the channel so far, but if you've seen any of the ones that I do have, you'll know that I like to just go through track by track, give you my thoughts on each song, and then some overall positives, negatives, and then what I would recommend if you enjoy this album. So with that being said, let's not waste any time and start talking about track one, The Drooling Class. So with track one, this song kind of just has everything that I want in a Hail the Sun song. It's got the kind of busy guitar leads with a lot of effects on. It's got a really nice chorus, and overall is just a nice, fun, energetic song to start the album with. I also think this one has a build-up and a breakdown that are really strong. This isn't a band that I would really say is known for its breakdowns or for being really heavy or anything like that. But when they do decide to go on more of the heavy route, I think they do a really nice job. And personally, I enjoy breakdowns more when they have some kind of melody attached to them, something that you can follow or sing back or hum. And I think this song does a really nice job of giving a more melodic breakdown as opposed to just some like low-tuned, chuggy stuff that some bands are doing now, which is totally fine. I love that stuff too. But personally, I lean more towards the more melodic style. Overall, I think this one is a really solid track to kick off the album. Moving on to track two, again, I think this song starts off really strong and has kind of a similar energy to that first track. Kind of checks all of the usual Hail the Sun boxes that I'm looking for when I'm listening to this band. The riffs, the layers, the song structure, all that stuff feels like a very natural progression of their usual music, but it still manages to stick out as something unique and something that would draw me back to listen to it again rather than just go listen to the old stuff that sounds similar. I also feel like this song has more of a refined approach in the vocals, especially the delivery. Sometimes they tend to go more for the more like nasally kind of emo sound, that kind of like whiny texture, which I think usually fits their style really well. But I think this one has just some more like body behind the vocals, a little more like gravel in the voice. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it feels a little more controlled and refined rather than opting for that more nasally approach. There's a bridge section towards the middle that I really enjoy, and I like that the song ends on a heavy note. I don't know that I'd call it a full-on breakdown like the previous song had, but I do like that they interject these moments of heaviness in the more energetic songs. Overall, I think this one is another solid song to start the album off. Track number three does more of what the previous two songs did. It has a very similar energy, a very similar song structure. Something I think that this one does to help it stand out a little bit from the previous two is the cadence in the verses with the vocals. The delivery of the lyrics, I think, is something that makes it a little more catchy than the previous two, and that's something that helps it stand out for me. Other than that, I don't have too much to say about track number three. I think it's another solid song, but I will say at this point, the first three songs kind of check all of the same boxes, and they have a very similar vibe and feel to them. Track number four, Insensitive Tempo, starts off with more of a relaxed vibe, which I do appreciate after the previous three songs all kind of having this same energy level to them. I like that they bring it down for just a second at the start of this song. I think there's some unique sound design in this one. There's a synth guitar sound and like just this kind of happy, upbeat, really catchy melody that happens. It really reminded me of bands like Polyphia and Intervals, and I thought that was a unique section to add to help this song stand out as unique from the previous three. Another thing we get that we haven't heard on the previous tracks is this like acoustic fade out that they do at the very end. I will say, if I had to nitpick this song, I do feel like the acoustic thing just kind of happens and it comes and it goes, and it's very short. There's not a lot of substance to it. I do appreciate the addition of the acoustic guitars, but I do feel like they could have done something more with that. For me, like something in the style of a band like Protest the Hero in their first couple albums, where they would have these kind of extended acoustic or instrumental interludes. Sometimes they would even include vocals and harmonies. They would bring in a female vocalist to kind of harmonize with the main vocalist. I think something like that could have really helped elevate this song. But otherwise, I feel like it just does some more of the same. There's some interesting, unique sounds and a few sections that are a little different style-wise. And that acoustic thing I felt like was a moment that they could have done a little bit more to make the song stand out and have a more unique moment on the album. Moving on to track number 5, Blight. For me, this is one of my favorites on the album. I feel like it kind of checks the heavy song box that we're usually looking for in a metal album, and I think they do it really well. I love how it starts out, with that lo-fi guitar riff before it kicks in for real. I think they do a nice job with that, and I think they do a really cool thing with the drums, kind of having these over-the-bar line fills. The song, as far as I'm aware, is in 4/4 time. When I kind of counted it out, that's what it seemed to be doing. The drums just kind of mess with that a little bit, and on first listen, it kind of threw me off, and it made me think maybe they were adding a couple beats here and there or subtracting some beats. But then when I kind of broke it down and listened to it again, they're really just doing some cool things with the drum parts to kind of give it a unique feel. There's a riff on here around the 40-second mark of the song, one of my favorite riffs on the whole album. I think that's a really cool heavy moment, and I love that they just play it once and then they leave that riff alone. It doesn't come back 10 more times or come back as a super heavy slow breakdown at the end. Like they just hit this unique section. I don't really feel like there's something else on the album that feels the same way that short little riff does, and it's a really nice heavy moment that I enjoyed. There's a switch up in the middle of the song to more of this Latin feel, and I feel like it really contrasts the heavy section at the start of the song, but I feel like they transition between the two really smoothly, and then coming out of the Latin section, they switch feels again into more of this kind of triplet-y feel, and I like that they're able to keep the structure of the song moving forward, and none of these sections really overstay their welcome. They just kind of move from idea to idea. But I didn't feel that any of these sections felt incomplete or underbaked. It felt like they all just kind of hit the spots they needed to for as long as they needed to, and then moved on to keep the song feeling like it was fluid and had really nice structure. If I did have to nitpick this one, I would say that the ending feels just a little inconclusive. I wish that they could have done something a little different to punctuate the ending and make it feel more conclusive. That's a really small complaint, and at the end of the day, that one is more of a subjective thing. That's just my taste and what I would have done. But overall, I think this is easily one of my favorite songs on the album. Moving on to track number 6, Consumed With You. If the previous song was meant to be kind of the heavy one on the album, this one definitely feels like it's supposed to be one of the softer ones, and I like that they put those two right next to each other. Just so that when you're listening from start to finish on this album, there's some contrast between the different styles of songs. I like that this one holds a 12/8 feel throughout the whole thing, this kind of triplet-y 3 feel that the other songs, they have moments of, but they never stay on it like this song does. And that's something that helps it feel unique and stand out as different from the previous songs. Other than that, I think this one is pretty straightforward. It feels a little more standard than the previous songs, especially the last one, where the structure is kind of all over the place and they're jumping between these styles. This one feels a lot more straightforward, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think they just kind of stick to a more basic approach on this one and emphasize the vocals a little more over the instrumental writing, which is totally fine to do after the whole opening half of this album containing a very heavy reliance on that instrumental writing. I don't really have too much more to say about this one. I think it's one that I'm not going to seek out on my own. If I want to listen to songs off this album, it's not going to be one of the first ones that comes to mind. But I do think if I'm listening to the full album all the way through, it's not one that I would press skip on. Moving on to track 7, I Can Tell by the Scars. This one is more of a return to form of the first half of the album. It goes for more of that energetic vibe coming out of what could be more of the ballad type song with track number 6. I think this one is fun. There's not a lot going on in the first half that really stands out as super different to me from some of the previous songs that go for the same vibe earlier in the album. However, there is a cool switch up near the end of the song. There's this like 4 on the floor kind of drum beat thing that happens, and then there's a synthesizer solo, which I don't know that I've heard in one of their songs, and it's this really shreddy thing. It's a lot of fun, and I think it adds a unique element that we don't hear on the rest of this album, and something that we don't hear a lot of from them in general. So I thought that was a cool moment to make the back half of the song stand out. I also I like some of the smaller production details on this song. Towards the end, after that synth solo, there's the final chorus. I like that they kind of drop things down, the vocals build up, and then they change some of the lyrics at the start of that final chorus, and they extend it out just a little bit. There's a nice build up, and there's this kind of riser filter effect that happens before the final chorus has its impact. And I think it's just little icing on the cake details like that that help the song stick out. And when I'm listening to it again and again, it's moments like that that make me want to return to those songs. Moving on to track number 8, Building Code. I think for me, this is one of my least favorites so far in the album. I don't think it's a bad song by any means, and I think it definitely fits in, again, with other slower type songs that they've done before. Not that I need everything from Hail the Sun to be heavy. I do like some of their more softer moments, but for me, this one just doesn't stand out amongst some of their other softer songs. I thought instrumentally, the bass was doing a nice job supporting this song, and the drums have some cool moments, especially in the verses. They play around with the beats a little bit, and there's some cool cymbal work that's happening to add a fun energy, even though the song is meant to capture more of a softer feel. Vocally, I feel like this one is a little bit weaker too. The melodies don't stick out as much to me, and I feel like the chorus is a little bit weaker than some of the previous choruses we've had on the album. They're doing overall a lot of things that they've done on other songs, and I think if you like Hail the Sun, this song doesn't feel any different from songs that they've done before. Just for me, it doesn't scratch that same itch that some of their previous songs do. Moving on to track number 9, Relapse is a Love Affair. I think this one, on my first listen through this album, this was another point where I kind of thought, like, okay, we're doing another slow song. I hope things kind of pick up again. The first half of the album is really energetic, and then they kind of have a couple slow songs in a row. I do think this one is just more of a slow burn. It does end up arriving at a more energetic point, and I think they do the build-up really well. I think the vocals stand out a lot more on this one than they did in some of the other previous softer styled songs, and I think overall it arrives at a satisfying conclusion. But in context of the full album, this is where I started to wonder if maybe they would benefit from shuffling a few of the songs around. I'll talk about that a little more in my overall thoughts, but this is really the point in the album where that started to cross my mind. Like I said, the song does eventually get to a more energetic point, and I think when that chorus kicks in with the guitars, and they kind of maintain that energy that they hit halfway through the song, I think it does work pretty well. I would say it's one of my favorite songs that are in more of that softer style that they do on this album specifically. But I think it's pretty decent overall, and the more I've listened to this one and revisited it, the more I've come to enjoy that slow burn build-up. Next up, we've got track number 10, Rightless Destiny. I really like this one a lot. It kicks the energy level back up. This one has way more of a thrashy feel, and I really like the energy that this brings getting towards the end of the album. The main guitar lead that pops up in the choruses and a couple other moments of the song, for me, it's really catchy, and it stands out as some strong writing from the instrumental side of things and from the guitar side of things. I think something that Hail the Sun does that I like a lot in their previous albums is the chord progressions. They usually have some interesting things in there, and I think the verses in this song, they pull in some more tension-building chords to help build into the choruses, and I think that works really well. The chorus itself is another classic Hail the Sun chorus. It's got those big soaring vocals. It's got a lot of busy, layered guitar leads that are very melodic, and I think it's a really strong chorus on this album. There's a really cool section that happens halfway through the song where the drums go into a halftime feel, and the guitars get pretty busy. It's not really a breakdown. I wouldn't call it a breakdown, but it kind of evokes the same feeling as a breakdown. I think it has this nice heavy-ish moment while still maintaining that complexity that the song started with. There's also some parts where the guitar kind of solos over the vocals, And I thought those moments worked really well and really highlighted the instrumental side of things on this song. Specifically, the guitar work I think really stands out on this track. Next up, we've got the closer track, War Crimes. I'm going to talk about this one for a minute because there's a lot of things I want to say about it. I think it's a really solid closer to the album, and they do some really cool things that I want to dig a little deeper into. First of all, it starts off with this really catchy guitar lead that pops up throughout the song, which we'll talk about more in a second, but I think it's a really strong riff, and I like that they kind of center the song around that melodic idea. The opening section, the thrashy, upbeat, really fast, energetic thing, it really reminded me of like Misadventures era, Pierce the Veil. I thought it was really fun, and I love that band. I think there's a lot of stylistic similarities between them and Hail the Sun. So when I heard that section kick in, it just kind of put a big smile on my face. I also think this song really has the most like thrashy, up-tempo feeling of the whole album, and I like that they're closing things out on a very, very energetic note. I think the chorus is pretty solid too. The vocals, again, have more of that refined approach that I've mentioned for previous songs, and they're really, like, in the chorus, he's really stressing certain syllables, and it almost feels like he's on the backside of the beat, like in an intentional way. It feels like they're really kind of punctuating these vocals in a very like weighted sort of way that adds kind of this pulled back feeling to the chorus and really gives a lot of emphasis to the vocal part in that section. I think the drums also do a lot for this song, especially in the second verse. When I was listening to this song again and again, there's these moments where the drums just switch between these little styles and they get really busy for some moments, and then there's like a disco beat at one section, and I think the drums add a lot of energy and variance to this song, and I think they did a really nice job with this one. Okay, now I'm gonna gush about the breakdown in this song for a second. Structurally, the way that they get to this breakdown, I think it's really some genius songwriting. And it's another one of those more melodic focused breakdowns that I feel works really well. They don't really rely on breakdowns throughout this album. There's only a couple, and there's one at the very beginning of the album on the first track, and then there's one to close out the album. So I like that they're not always going for these heavier moments, but when they do, I feel like they execute them really well. And this song is certainly no exception to that. So getting into this breakdown, things kind of drop out after the second chorus, and you hear that guitar lead from the beginning, and they play it really short and kind of a lo-fi build-up sort of way. But it's not a very long build-up. It's not a tension building, like vocals, drums building things up. It just cuts out to this little instrumental section for a few measures, and then they hit you with the intro riff, that main guitar lead that they're building the piece around, but they do it in more of a halftime feel with some screams coming in, and I think it works really effectively as a heavy moment that didn't need a build-up to get there. But this is where I think that songwriting and the structure gets really smart, because after the breakdown plays once, things drop out again, and we get that same instrumental section, but with this like slap bass going over it, and they draw this instrumental section out just a little bit longer, and then we do get a vocal build-up. We get, you know, like a good call out, a good scream breakdown build-up. However, I think that this first instance of the breakdown is actually not a breakdown. I would argue it's the build-up to the real breakdown that we get after the first breakdown. So what I mean by all that is, yeah, they drop out after the chorus, they have this instrumental section, and they hit us with a halftime heavy version of a riff we've heard before. I think by all metrics that is a breakdown. However, they drop out again after that first breakdown, and we get that same instrumental kind of build-up section, except this time it comes back, it's a little more drawn out. There's this really cool slap bass part going over it, and then we do get a vocal call out to build up to another arrival of that same riff just in a slightly heavier context. The first time around, I think the drums are a little more busy, and they kind of push and pull the feel a little bit, and the vocals are in there, and it feels heavy, but it feels heavier the second time you hear it after another short instrumental buildup. So I think songwriting and structure-wise, this is all really smart. They sort of use the breakdown the first time through as the build-up to the real breakdown, without doing like, here's the riff and here's the same riff slower, or here's the riff and then here's a heavier section where we just play the rhythm on open string chugs. They don't use those normal tropes that some bands do to get that here's the same breakdown presented in a heavier format. They just present the same riff, changing a few little things about the drums, and it's that middle piece, that instrumental build up coming back a second time, slightly more extended, with a vocal lead in to help accent that arrival the second time with the breakdown. I feel like it's really, really smart songwriting, and it makes it feel like the breakdown is the build up to the real breakdown, and you get the same riff packaged differently, and it comes back feeling heavier the final time. Overall, definitely one of my favorite songs from the album, and I think this song is a really strong one to close things off with. So that's the track by track review. For some overall thoughts, I'll start with the positives. So my overall positive takeaways, I think this is a really strong album from Hail the Sun all the way through. There are a ton of things that you are hoping to hear from them. They have the standard guitar riffs that they're known for, a lot of very fun, layered, busy guitar writing that I think adds to the song. There's some cool chords, some unique style changes in some of the songs. The drums are adding a lot of energy to certain moments of the album. I think vocally they have some really strong choruses, and I mentioned before that I think he takes a more refined approach at certain moments, and just demonstrates some more vocal control and maturity. They still have some moments where they do that nasally emo thing, but then they have some moments where it feels more like there's more body behind the vocals. And I like that they use both of those, because I think both can be effective at different times in the album. I think most of the songs really hit the mark for me, and I would say that this is a really great album from Hail the Sun. For a couple of negatives, overall, I mentioned earlier that I think the pacing of this album is a little bit off. While I do think all of the songs have their moments or have some element to them that make them stand out, I think grouping 4 or 5 more energetic, heavier, faster, whatever you want to call them, songs at the beginning, and then grouping more of the softer, more mellow songs towards the middle, I think in the context of the full album, listening from start to finish, that kind of takes away from some of the songs. I think all of these songs individually can stand on their own 2 feet, but in context, from start to finish of this album, when you're listening to the first 5 songs and they all capture this very similar feel, it kind of makes them all sound sort of samey in a way, and I think that their unique moments are overshadowed by having a very similar tone or style to songs that just came right before those ones. I also think, I mentioned with a couple of the songs that I think the endings sometimes are a little inconclusive. I think there are some moments where they could have extended the endings or done something to punctuate the end of the songs, especially some of the heavier ones that start with a bang and then just kind of end with a little vocal refrain, or just something that didn't feel very satisfying. And those are small nitpicks, but things that I do think could have made this album be just a little stronger when you're listening from front to back. In the grand scheme of things, I think the positives really outweigh the negatives for me. I feel like my nitpicks are pretty small and honestly more on the subjective side of just what I prefer to hear in this style of music. So I definitely think this is a great album. I would highly recommend it to anyone that's a fan of this genre. Some bands that I would definitely check out if you are interested in this album, or if you enjoy some of the songs on here. I've mentioned them already in this review, but Protest the Hero is a great one. They do a lot of these style switch ups. They go into more of that progressive metal territory, moving around time signatures. But they have really interesting guitar writing, very layered, and a similar vocal approach at times. I also think Pierce the Veil is another great one. They also do a lot of these, especially in their earlier albums, some more of these thrashy moments, really interesting layered guitar work with, again, that similar vocal approach, very high range male singer, more of that kind of emo nasally approach in the tone of the vocals. So I think if you like this album, you would like both of those bands. If you really like the instrumental side of this band and the guitar work, I'd recommend that you check out the band Intervals. They actually toured together. I got to see them, and I thought that pairing worked really well. The songs have a similar feel to them. The guitar work in Intervals is very melodic. It's very thrashy at times. They've got like these punk thrash beats that happen, and there's a really upbeat feel and a busyness to the guitar work that I think Hail the Sun fans would enjoy. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this review. Thanks for checking it out. If you made it to the end, leave a comment with your thoughts on this album. I'd love to see what you guys think about this one. Again, I think it's a really solid addition to the rest of the songs that they've put out, and I would definitely recommend this album if you are interested in this kind of sound. Let me know if you want me to review other albums in this style. I'm thinking about checking out the new Greyhaven album next. So if you want to see more reviews in this style, please let me know, and I will see you in the next one.